So let's once more light up that virtual fire here at the Fireside Chat. And at this warming place, Victoria Klich, Arthur Brightman, and John Woods will have a conversation about blockchain beyond crypto, technology unlocking opportunities across various industries. So welcome on stage, Victoria, Arthur, and John.
Hello. Thanks, folks.
Hello. Hey, my microphone is working. Warmly welcome. I'm really looking forward into this panel because I've talked to you guys not only just right now before going on stage, but also yesterday. And I feel like you have a lot of things to say that goes beyond probably what people know here about crypto, about use cases, and also the opportunity for developers to build with blockchain. And before we start to go into the topics, would you mind just introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, and maybe also the blockchain ecosystem that you're representing in here?
My name is Arthur Brightman. I'm here to represent a great sense of fashion and taste, but also I'm a co-founder of the Tezos blockchain, which is a layer 1 blockchain that's been going strong since 2018.
Cool. I'm John Woods. I'm the CTO at the Algorand blockchain, which is not as cool, by the way, as I was just admitting to Arthur, as being a founder of one. So I look after tech for Algorand, and prior to that, I worked on Cardano as a software architect. I led software architecture on Cardano.
It's not as cool, but it's much wiser.
Okay, maybe let's start with an icebreaker question, so to say. So why should people build on Tezos or build on Algorand, for example?
I mean, the reason to build on Tezos have evolved over the years, but the thing that unifies them is that Tezos is a platform that constantly evolves. So Tezos has had 16 upgrades. They happen in a decentralized fashion with the whole community taking part in the upgrade, and that has allowed Tezos to stay at the forefront. So when Tezos launched, it was the first proof-of-stake blockchain with snatching, with economic incentives. And people building on Tezos, they knew that not only the chain was good, but it would stay good. And that's been true through the years, with now Tezos embarking on a very big scaling story. So a lot of scaling capabilities has been added to Tezos over the past couple of years, and it's going to continue going forward.
And just because this is what I remember, for some reason I associate Tezos a lot with the art scene, because back and then when NFTs were like a huge thing, or where they became a huge thing, I've heard that a lot of artists were building with and on Tezos. Why was that the case?
Yeah, they were and they still are. There's a fantastic art community on Tezos. I think it started from a few things. One, there was a bit of a kinship because Tezos is a network that has always stood for authenticity. It's not been overhyped. It delivered on what it was supposed to be. And I think this was recognized. The values of decentralization, the fact that it was not corporate, I think was an important aspect. But also, it was a network that didn't use proof of work, like Ethereum, and so a lot of people who were concerned about the energy cost and the energy impact of mining preferred to mint on Tezos. And it was also extremely cheap to do it. You didn't have to pay $20, $30. You had to pay just pennies in order to create. And so artists could afford to be a lot more experimental on the platform, and also we could onboard artists from a lot of places, not just the United States or Europe, but also Africa, South America, and really all over the world. And that's, I think, created this wonderful art scene we've seen on Tezos.
Thank you.
I think maybe to build on what Arthur said, for a long time, I didn't see value in building on blockchain myself. I was telling someone earlier on that, I got my first Bitcoin in 2013, but I didn't buy enough of them or I wouldn't be on this stage. I'd be with my wife in the south of France. And even when Ethereum, I remember when Ethereum was $6, I didn't buy that either. Instead, I bought Monero, which is now maybe worth a couple of $100, whereas Ethereum is thousands of dollars, right? So it took me a long time to understand the value proposition of these programmable blockchains. But after working on Ethereum, working on Cardano, and now working on Algorand, I think I've distilled it to this. These blockchains like Tezos and Algorand are just platforms that execute code. When you write code, you compile it for a CPU, right, an instruction set, right, or an architecture, x86, ARM, RISC, whatever. When you write code for these blockchains like Tezos or Algorand, you also compile your code to target the virtual machine or the interpreter at the heart of the blockchain. They're just platforms for code, for the execution of code. They're just operating systems, but they execute the code in a decentralized context. And so rather, of course, you're all developers, you know this, rather than the code running singularly on a single CPU or a single device in front of you, the veracity of the execution of the code is done in a global or distributed context. Now, why would I do that? Because it's slow, it's inefficient, it's sometimes expensive, it sometimes has delays. Why would I do that? The answer is, there are certain requirements you can build solutions for on blockchain that are not possible to achieve with the same elegance using centralized solutions. It's a small subset of requirements. It's not like blockchain fits everything. It certainly does not. But where you want to disintermediate someone, where you want to build peer-to-peer solutions, where you want to have self-sovereignty or ownership over assets or other artifacts in your solution, blockchain really makes apps sing.
To rebound on that, I think for a long time, it was very important when looking at blockchain applications that the unique strengths of the technology be featured. So the unique strengths, I would say, of blockchain historically have been censorship resistance, decentralization, permissionlessness. And you'd see a lot of applications and you were saying, well, if you're not really if this is not really important for an application, if like censorship resistance is not absolutely crucial for your application, why are you using a blockchain? But the underlying idea here is that fundamentally it's very expensive and it's cumbersome to use it as a technology. And this was true, I would say, for the longest time, before we knew how to scale blockchains. That has changed. I think there's a clear idea on how these systems can scale. And I would say Tezos is one of the first to actually do it and deliver on that. And with scaling and with the cost going to nearly zero, I think it opens up to a lot more applications where you don't necessarily need to rely that deeply on the value of the blockchain. You only need like a couple aspects. If these aspects make it slightly easier for you to build your application and the cost is near zero, then you might as well do it. And so that opens up to a lot more application types, specifically around web application than we see originally. So if you look at Bitcoin, for example, it really is for store value, some international payments, but not much else because the technology is expensive, it's slow, it doesn't really permit you to build anything else. With very, very, very cheap technology, you can broaden the horizon of the type of applications that can benefit from those systems.
Thank you, that sounds actually really good. But being let's say I'm a developer, I'm not a developer, I work for a VC, but if I need to decide where to start my journey, and I know we need several blockchain ecosystems to also work together to not only have one centralized entity, because we have many opportunities to use different blockchains, but why should I decide to, okay, now I work or build within the Tezos ecosystem, now I build within the Algorand ecosystem? What technical advantages does both of you guys have?
Well, I would say one of the technical advantages is the cost. It's always been cheap to build on Tezos. Even as usage of Tezos increased, Tezos has always scaled faster than the demand for transactions on the chain, and has a very impressive track record. And so if you want to build a centralized application that's going to have a permanent home, the Tezos ecosystem is a very good place to do that because you know that it's going to upgrade and it's going to keep up with the technology, as opposed to finding yourself somewhere that's a technological dead end. Now, there's many, many other choices. One of the things that we're building to make it particularly attractive to developers is support for mainstream programming language. So we have a project called Justice, for example, which lets you use JavaScript and JavaScript directly to build smart contracts on Tezos. Now, for a long time, we've had smart contract languages that had syntaxes that were very similar to JavaScript, so it could look like you were doing JavaScript. What we're bringing here is different. We are talking about a real JavaScript interpreter, and so your ability to use JavaScript and all of its libraries and all of the development environment that you're familiar with, but we're not stopping there. It's JavaScript, it's Python, and ultimately, it's any language that you can run in a Unix system, for example.
Right. I think it's a great point, Arthur. If you decide your application can benefit from blockchain, where it falls into the categories I mentioned earlier, disintermediation, provenance, root of trust, those kind of things, where blockchain adds something, then I think building forget about giving you a shill or an ad for Algorand. Just like when you're selecting your message bus or you're selecting your database and you're looking at the characteristics and the functional and non-functional requirements you're trying to meet with any technology you build with. Most likely with your blockchain, you're going to care about security, or you wouldn't be doing it. Scalability, will it scale vertically and horizontally to meet your customer demand? And then resilience, right? Is it going to be up when I need it? If I have a public blockchain as a critical component within my application stack, am I going to have problems where my backend is running fine in AWS, but the blockchain's down? And so I think when you're selecting a blockchain, you got to do so with those things in mind. I think Algorand, like Tezos, has recognized that we got to meet developers where they are, and asking people like yourselves to come and learn some new esoteric programming language to express your intent or your business logic in a smart contract in some syntactical flavor of JavaScript is not where it's at. When you're building and you have to hire developers, you don't want to pay them 20% more because they have blockchain in their title. And indeed, when you're maintaining the software that you put out there, you also want to do so in a cost-efficient manner. So, just like these guys, we're focusing on bringing syntactically, semantically regular programming languages to developers so that they can start in a place that feels normal, i.e. Python, TypeScript, without being a derivative of them, and also with features that you expect and you grew up with, like line-by-line debugging, step into, step over, these kind of normal things that you expect from a developer experience that have not really been available for blockchain-type applications before. The industry is now maturing to the point where you have these type of tools.
You guys mentioned applications quite a lot of times now. Maybe we go a little bit deeper into what is actually being built currently, and maybe what you think is the most promising project, if you can mention one or two things that are being built within the Tezos ecosystem, for example, now.
So in the traditional Tezos ecosystem L1, we have a lot of interesting projects in the art space, in the DeFi space, and also in the gaming space. We've seen projects, for example, like Stables, which was backed by the French PMU, which is the largest European horse racing company. So horse racing games. We've also seen a lot of casual mobile gaming on Tezos pickup and bring a lot of users on the chain. We've also had on the DeFi side, platforms who've been around for a while now, like Cubes and Plenty, but who keep innovating. And on the art side, of course, that's, I would say, one of the most visible and well-known aspects of the Tezos L1, where you see a lot of artists creating, innovating. So you'll see projects like FXhash and Object.com. Recently on Tezos, we've seen the launch of Etherlink, which is a layer 2 solution built on top of Tezos, which is completely EVM compatible. So compatible with Ethereum. And you were asking, why pick Tezos? Well, one of the reasons is that if you're unsure what ecosystem to pick, and you pick Etherlink, you have all the benefits of the security of Tezos, of some of the large community, but at the same time, you're also saying that, well, if for some reason it doesn't work for me, I can go into one of many other EVM-compatible ecosystems, like, of course, Ethereum, its L2s, or Avalanche, or a bunch of others. So essentially, it's a risk-free proposal for people to start building on Etherlink. And on Etherlink, we're seeing projects launch in DeFi, like Henji, for example, which are interesting. Projects in gaming, projects in NFTs as well.
So the reason, sorry,
the
reason for Etherlink was not because usually layer 2s, or in the beginning it was like, okay, they can speed up basically what Ethereum is doing, or in general it's like a cheaper and more faster layer. But for Tezos, it means to be also interoperable with other ecosystems. Was that the main reason?
Yeah, that's right. So if you build on, so Etherlink is a little different than Ethereum L2s. Ethereum L2s are Ethereum built on top of Ethereum. One thing that they all have in common is that they're all custodial, in the sense that if you're holding tokens on Base, or if you're holding token on Polygon, or if you're holding token, which is not really an L2, or if you're holding tokens on Optimism or Arbitrum, there's somewhere a small multi-signature of people who can decide to take all your coins. And yes, they've improved, they've added like security, but at the end of the day, it's still a small group of people who control all your assets. And we've seen a lot of bridges being hacked. Centralized actors like exchanges and bridge, they get hacked by North Korea all the time, and so that's a looming risk on all of this system. Whereas Etherlink, which is an L2 built on top of Tezos, is actually a decentralized rollup. and it gives you all the compatibility with Ethereum. There's bridging to Ethereum, but with more speed, much cheaper transaction, and built on top of Tezos, so it also comes with the governance and the evolution that people have come to expect out of the Tezos ecosystem.
Thank you. And just FYI, you can also ask questions in the app, I think. We will read them out loud, so don't hesitate to do that.
It's only €15.99 per question. Oh, but your money will be donated to children or something like that, so don't worry. Okay, I won't, again, I don't like to shill too hard on applications on Algorand. I'll give you two examples. There's parts of Afghanistan, there's parts of every country, I suppose, where there's disadvantaged people, but there's parts of Afghanistan that have an issue, particularly with women having access to financial institutions. And so there's a company we're working with, they built an Algorand on their own, but we support them in this build called HisabPay. And what they've done really is create a digital version of the Afghani, the currency out there. And they give women who have a cell phone out there financial independence. And the first thing I thought about when I heard this was like, yeah, that's cool, but like, who's going to take their digital Afghan token, right? Where can you spend that? And so what's been wonderful and what's really made the solutions actually work is that there's about 10,000 merchants within the region that accept this digital Afghani, right? So the system's like a closed loop. So now people who didn't have financial independence now have it, and I think it's those types of things make me feel good about what we're doing. Maybe one other example is a company called TravelX. They let you do peer-to-peer ticket sales. Now, it's for airplane tickets, and most people, when they book a flight, they tend to go on it. But where I'm excited is where we can kind of take solutions like that to industries that I currently despise, like, you know, Ticketmaster and their stranglehold over like the music industry. Like Ticketmaster disgusts me. And if we can kind of disintermediate them and allow artists to sell their tickets or venues to sell the tickets to people and have those tickets be fungible, that can be trustlessly moved between you know, fans or concert goers, there's power in that. And I think, you know, one final example is we've worked with a company called Archax to tokenize a money market fund, which is, of course, just, you know, big money market funds, which is not that interesting to a lot of people. But what I do think is interesting is that we've been able to drive efficiency. And so what used to be a two-day settlement, we can now do high-frequency trading on a tokenized version of the money market using regulated euro. That's also an electronic money token that's a EU-regulated and EU-recognized version of euro on-chain. So there's a few different examples there of where we're, in the first case, driving impact to make people's lives better. In the second case, emancipating the user from the stranglehold of the company that's providing a service. And in the third case, driving efficiencies in the financial markets.
From the things that you've mentioned, I mean, these are currently things that are taking place, they're existing, but is there something that you envision also for blockchain that is maybe not there yet, or something that is too difficult to implement yet?
Do you want to go first? That's a really hard question.
I think there's a lot of use cases which, so I would say one of the strongest impediments match for blockchain technology has to do with finance. And the main reason is that if you look at a blockchain, essentially, people say blockchains are immutable, but the whole point of a blockchain is to represent a mutation, right? The whole point of a blockchain is that you want to have a shared data structure that's accessed concurrently, where people can do mutation. If you don't want to do mutation, all you have is a distributed hash table will work beautifully for you. The mutation is what requires consensus. The mutation is when you have a double spend problem. That's the problem you're solving. If you're solving that problem, it means, you know, assets changing hand is going to be almost a constant feature of a lot of this thing. And those assets could be like art pieces, it could be game items. But at the end of the day, you know, you have transactions happening. And for a lot of the finance that we've seen on blockchains has been very circular. So you see DeFi, and what do people do in DeFi? Well, they provide liquidity to a DeFi protocol so that they can receive free DeFi tokens that they will use to stake to receive more DeFi tokens that will trade against those DeFi tokens. Finance, and there's a lot of innovation from a technological perspective, including financial engineering perspective. However, finance has to finance something. And right now, it's not really financing anything. There's some small exceptions. So we've had, for example, on Tezos also tokenizations of assets, tokenization of funds. We've seen these things, but they haven't really been able so far to be married with the simplicity of the DeFi experience, to be very seamless, to have the same sort of permissionless innovation you see in DeFi, but applied to assets that have I would say, some actual real-world impact. I think the real-world asset thing is overused as an expression because everything is in the real world. But in some sense, I would say things which are economically relevant, commodities, for example, large asset classes, you don't really see those. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that there's a lot of friction due to regulations. It's not that the regulations prevent this from happening, it's just that they've been written for certain systems, and it takes time for them to be adapted and to work their way into supporting blockchain ecosystems.
Do you think the frictions are just due to regulation, or also because maybe the tech is not where it should?
For the tokenization, for like using tokenized assets, yes, I would say it's like maybe 85% of it. The other 15% of it would be difficulties around custodies and some of the difficulties that people have with PKI and this type of things. But largely, I would say they are regulatory difficulties. And I think they're going to be solved. There's definitely a strong willingness from regulators to allow this type of activity to happen on blockchains. It just needs to, you just need to have a good fit between the actual regulatory framework that's going to be adopted and how the technology works.
Yeah, I would say it's an interesting question. It's a hard question. The question is basically, what's the killer app? You know, what is the new innovation coming? I would say platforms like Algorand and Tezos are usually Turing complete, and so you can kind of do anything you can do on a normal computer with the obvious restriction that you have to fit into a contract. What I think I would like people to take away from my talks at WeAreDevelopers is that Algorand and the other programmable blockchains are just another tool or framework in your toolbox for realizing solutions for specific requirements. It's like, it's not going to sprinkle fairy dust over your solution, but where it's able to drive value for your end user, I think it can be a very powerful value add.
Are you also doing something with AI? Because we spoke about this.
Yeah, so the AI thing is interesting. I, like most people, thought convolutional neural networks and recurrent neural networks were cool when they came out first, and we could use Dragon Magic Dictaphone to talk to our computers back when Windows 95 was cool. By the way, great T-shirt, Arthur Scott. Let's all be real about that. And of course, transformers happened, right? And then GPUs got fast, and now we have LLMs, which are incredibly impressive. In fact, I have Meta's LLM on my laptop. It's like 8 gigabytes. And it essentially knows a lot about everything. It's an incredible compression technology. Someone asked me at a conference about 6 months ago, oh, what's the intersection between blockchain and AI? And I thought, what a load of horse shit. There is no intersection between blockchain and AI. Because I was like, a distributed ledger, okay, yeah, and your crypto tokens, how do they marry with LLMs? And my first naive thought was, oh, maybe you might call an inference on an LLM from a contract, through an oracle or some other convoluted methodology. But actually, I've changed my mind. And I think that there might be 2 interesting things that I've seen so far. The first is, we've seen how good the generative video stuff has gotten, right? And so the provenance of images, video, and news, I think, is going to get more and more important. You only got to look at what happened with Donald Trump getting attacked or tried to be assassinated there, and the amount of stuff that was circulating. And there was no source on the images and stuff. I think blockchains could be helpful in timestamping or ensuring the veracity of information. The second thing is a bit more tangible. I think it's cooler. I was talking to some really smart kids from AWS, and they're looking at training LLMs in a distributed context using distributed systems like Algorand. And so what's cool about that is, the power overhead and, of course, the compute overhead to train an LLM is ginormous. And right now, companies like Meta give us their LLMs for free. I mean, it's unbelievable. It must have cost hundreds of millions of dollars to train Llama 3, okay? How long will that last? How long will it be the case that you get free LLMs out of big companies? I think the idea that you would help train a model and then get some credit towards inference on that model, if we can solve the problem of doing so in a way that is that the correctness of the training can withstand some kind of Byzantine fault tolerance, that's an exciting area, and I think it could be a natural marriage for blockchain and AI.
So, yeah, I would say like John. When I look at this, I don't think this is a null intersection. You know, anything is going to intersect with anything. If you look at the plumbing industry and if you look at the baking industry, you know, sometimes a baker needs a plumber to come over. But it's intersection you would expect if there's not like very strong synergies. There are some though. So for example, the fact that LLMs are going to be doing a lot of the coding, I think in the future, means that it's important to have programming languages that are useful for your blockchain, which have very wide corpuses so that programmers can use autocomplete features like Copilot very efficiently. It's just like one small thing, but it matters. I also think it's going to make formal verification much more automatable. And so having, like betting more on the fact that those languages are going to be verified, I think is an important direction to go towards. We've worked a lot on having formal verification that was easy to do on those smart contracts, but if it's going to be automated, it changes a little bit what you want. In terms of decentralized training, I'm more skeptical because fundamentally the training of large models today is latency bound, which is why people have this like big InfiniBand thing and like everything in one data center. That could change in the future, of course. However, inference is less latency bound, so maybe like inference network we'll see, but I'm a bit more skeptical on that.
Interesting. Do we have questions? Okay, we have questions because I was just looking at the time. I also have questions, but your question go first.
Yeah, let's see what the audience wants to know from you. And I would like to start with the topic of mass adoption. So one question is, what is incentivizing companies to give up their sovereignty? What is incentivizing the general public to give up on user experience if they don't care about decentralization or security?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. So as a large company, sometimes you want to tie your hands because that will be a user acquisition strategy, right? So if you have users of a social network and and the monopolistic social network is abusing its power and you want to attract users to your other social network, you have to offer users something that they don't have, and you say, well, they're behaving poorly, come to us. And we promise we're not going to behave poorly, but it's not just a promise because of the way that we structure our technology, we won't be able to do this type of thing. So it can be a user acquisition strategy for large companies to do this. It doesn't have to be large companies. Maybe it's startups that actually compete with these large companies, and they do so by offering this to users. Users don't care about decentralization, and I don't care about decentralization either. I care about the outcome of decentralization. I care about censorship resistance. I care about permissionlessness. And I think users are able to tell over time, if you have two networks and some of them become censored and some of them become captured by special interests and others keep striving and keep being lively and evolving, then people are not going to care that one is decentralized or not. They're going to go to the one that's thriving. And if the decentralization allows it to thrive, that's why they're going to go there.
Yeah, I would just say users are going to buy the ticket they can resell without kissing Ticketmaster's ass. And I agree the UX isn't great at the moment, but it'll get better.
All right, thank you. Then let's see from the other side, also about adoption. So how well has the application development and adoption of blockchain lived up to its hype?
I don't think as well as one would expect. And I think it required a reset. It required a rethink in terms of the developer experience. And I think if you just look at what they're doing, what Tezos have been doing, and indeed what Algorand have doing, and by the way, many other blockchains have been doing, it's like I said, meeting developers where they are, bringing you languages, allowing you to develop in languages you already know, and giving you a user experience where you're in VS Code, you're running, you click play, you can step into your code, you can debug your code line by line. The kind of things that we pretended weren't necessary, we've of course recognized is necessary, and I think we're improving the dev UX.
I would say it depends who you get your hype from. I'm excited about the technology. I love the technology. I've been in a weird position over the past several years of basically constantly pouring cold water because while I'm excited about the technology, there's so many people in our industry that way overhype it. So, by that metric, of course, it's falling very, very short. By a reasonable metric of what it can actually achieve, I think it's doing well.
Okay, I guess we have time for one more. So let's hurry up. And yeah, here's the question. Back in the day, many people hyped the supposed anonymity of blockchains. Is this still a thing, or has the focus shifted towards the immutability of data on the chains?
So I think it's a great question. And you're right, a lot of people bought drugs with Bitcoin and thought it was private. It's not. Don't buy your drugs with Bitcoin. Use Monero. Jokes aside, the blockchain has very, very little privacy by definition. The chain is completely transparent. You can look at the chain. If I know your account, I can look into your balance. There's some small privacy primitives that try to obfuscate this, so it's harder to ascertain certain things. But blockchain has a privacy problem. And networks like Algorand right now, the smart contracts are not private. So I think it's something that we need to add, we need to look at, and it requires some quite exotic cryptographic primitives, quite exotic mathematics to achieve. But I think blockchain needs to add proper privacy, and we don't have it right now.
So there are technological solutions on Tezos for people who want privacy. I would say today the challenges are less technical because they were at one point, it was an extremely hard computer science problem to solve on how to make private transaction on a blockchain. I think it was largely solved. We have, and Zcash was the first to, I would say, properly do that. And you can use the solutions on Tezos today. The main challenges today are more to do with compatibility with the real world, with exchanges, shutting down access to cryptocurrencies that focus on privacy, making it difficult for custody, making it difficult for users. So I think you need a mix. You're always going to have some people living in a basement, wearing a hoodie and transacting their private currency, but it's going to be small. If you want to have mainstream private currencies, I think some courts battle will need to be won.
Great, thank you for this awesome talk. There were tons of other questions, so maybe some of the people will approach you afterwards. So
That's good.
thank you very much, Victoria, Arthur, and John.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next and the last event for today on this stage will be 17:30, so 5:30, the panel discussion about how is AI changing the leadership role. Stay tuned, we are back in some minutes.